Hello everyone, welcome to or back to the channel. I'm Tobias, this is the Reading Realm, and in today's video we're going to be taking a look at Throne of Glass. This is part 3 of this series breakdown. So just like in part 2, we'll take a very deep look at the book itself, the characters, the plot, my favorite moments and chapters, and everything in between. So if you want to do this in order, then I recommend watching part 2 before this one, where I go over Assassin's Blade. If not, then strap yourselves in. This is going to be a long one. Let's get started. Oh, one quick thing, if you're not already and you are enjoying the content so far, perhaps consider subscribing to the channel. I'd love to see my community grow. Alrighty, so the story starts with Celaena, 1 year into her imprisonment at the salt mines of Endovier. I really appreciate how the book doesn't waste time with this slow build. We're thrown straight into Celaena's world, where she is both physically and mentally. The descriptions of Endovier are grim, hopeless and oppressive, setting the tone for just how far Celaena has fallen. Her chances of surviving, let alone escaping, are seemingly non-existent, and that bleakness makes the sudden shift in her fate all the more striking. So we enter with Chol Westfall, captain of the guard, who unexpectedly pulls her from her prison cell, bringing her before Prince Dorian Havillard with the proposition: compete in a secret tournament issued by the king himself to become his personal assassin. If she wins, she will serve the crown, serve the king for 4 years, and then be granted her freedom. The alternative, though pretty obvious, stay and most likely die sooner rather than later. Now, I'll admit I am a sucker for a good tournament arc. It might be a trope, but when it's done well, it really works for me, so naturally I was immediately intrigued. But I was also left wondering, why does the king need assassins specifically? There is definitely more to this offer than meets the eye, and that had me engaged. Still, with freedom dangling just out of reach, Celaena agrees, though reluctantly. From her point of view, it's a practical decision, not an emotional one. Celaena then travels back to Rifthold with Chol and Dorian, entering the competition under a false name, false identity, Lillian Gordania, a jewel thief. She is to train under Chol while facing off against 23 other champions, criminals, warriors, thieves, and other assassins, all with their own, as well as their sponsors, hidden motives and agenda. Or at least that's what I thought or hoped for. Apart from a select few who become more than just names, there really isn't any other champion and his sponsor that matters. Now, I'll admit I didn't want them all to matter, but to pick maybe 4 or 5, have them fleshed out a lot more, understanding how they got there, why they are also desperate for this opportunity, could have led itself well to the story, as well as the growing mystery to come. The King of Adelan briefly appears again here. He's just as cold, calculating, authoritative as we see him in Assassin's Blade. He himself doesn't have his own champion, but Duke Perrington, a very close advisor, an obnoxious and extremely politically ambitious man, does. He sponsors Cain, a large, brutal ex-soldier from the White Fang Mountains, who are revered and feared for their physicality and brutality. Early on, Celaena begins to befriend Dorian and starts developing a more respectful rapport with Chol. Dorian is charming, he's intelligent, with an unexpected depth and empathy that draws him to Celaena. Though he's politically restrained, he treats her with surprising kindness. Chol, on the other hand, he embodies the stereotypical stoic, dutiful guard. He is initially distant, obviously due to his assignment to oversee Celaena's training, and restricting personal involvement with her, though a level of respectful understanding does begin to grow. I really like both of these characters. They're not especially deep or groundbreaking at first glance, but they're written with care, and all of their interactions with each other and with Celaena are consistently engaging. I always found myself looking forward to their scenes together. Their personalities clash and complement each other in believable ways. And watching the three of them slowly build their mutual respect felt natural and rewarding. At the beginning, both Dorian and Troll mostly see Celaena through the lens of her reputation. The infamous assassin, a cold-blooded killer. I found this refreshingly realistic. But of course, over time, we do watch that image unravel as they begin to truly see her for her wit, her vulnerability, her strength beyond violence. That evolution in perception is one of the most satisfying elements of their development. We also get a rare chapter from Dorian's point of view, which I very much appreciated. It gives us a much needed glimpse into his internal world, something I felt was very much missing from or with Sam in The Assassin's Blade. Through it, we learn about the pressure he's under to marry, his growing frustration with courtly life, and how disillusioned he is with the role he is forced to play. Now, obviously, it's not some revolutionary insight, but it does deepen him just enough to make his growing bond with Celaena more meaningful. You start to understand why he's drawn to her, not just because she's different, but because she is real in a way his world rarely is. And again, reading this chapter made it very clear why connecting with Sam and the relationship he had with Celaena in the first book so challenging. We were missing something like this, a standalone moment or chapter to really flesh him out, to deepen his character in a way that would have allowed for me to connect with him properly. Meanwhile, however, eerie things begin to happen. One of the champions is found dead, a champion called Eye Eater. We find out later from Troll that his body was brutally mutilated, ripped open, his organs were missing, which is just the start of a pattern that we begin to see. Celaena starts to grow a little suspicious and wary of something far more darker and ominous happening within the castle. The way these champions start turning up dead in such gruesome, violent, unnatural ways was very chilling, and I absolutely loved it. Add in the strange symbols scrawled nearby, added a thrilling, mystical element I was all for. And it added a much needed sense of urgency. Suddenly the competition wasn't just about surviving the tests, it was also about surviving at all. It cracked open the world, it hinted at deeper, more dangerous forces to play. I was definitely more engaged from this point on. Now, I will be honest, up until this point, the story has been, I wouldn't say boring, but relatively grounded. Sure, we were just getting to know the characters and the palace politics were simmering, but there hadn't really been a spark yet. Nothing that truly jolted me until these mysterious murders. They really took the story up a gear in a way that I think was necessary. Celaena also meets two more people whose names are horrible to try to pronounce. We have Nehemia Yucher, visiting princess from Elware. She's intelligent and enigmatic. Both start to form a cautious but developing friendship with each other. Nehemia gives us insight into Elware, speaking passionately about her oppressed homeland. And Celaena Rompia. She's just a noblewoman of middling status, eager to climb the court's social ladder, jealous of Celaena's growing presence and also her developing relationship with Prince Dorian. She is also very connected, or very closely connected to Duke Parrington. Nehemia quickly became one of my favorite characters. There's just something refreshing about people who are in power but defy expectations, who are intelligent but grounded and deeply human. She reminds me a lot of Dorian in a way. Despite being a princess, she carries herself with humility and sincerity, and she doesn't posture or hide behind status. And one of the things that immediately drew me in was just how quickly she and Celaena clicked. Celaena is capable of speaking Nehemia's native language, something she picked up during her time in Endovier. And it becomes this unexpected bridge between them. She translates freely, often taking liberties with what's being said, and it makes for such a fun, playful dynamic. I found myself smiling and laughing through all of their initial interactions. And what was really striking was just how honest and unguarded those interactions were. Speaking in a language no one else around them could understand gave them this freedom to be real, to say what they really meant without judgment or pretense. It became obvious right away that both of them needed this connection. They'd both somehow been alone, but in their own ways, missing a kind of true companionship that they never had before. They just get each other. Watching it unfold felt like a deep breath, something warm and sincere in the midst of all this courtly games, blood sport, and secrets. The princess is definitely more than she seems, though. She's seemingly trustworthy, but has an agenda we do not know yet, and Celaena reflects this thought, maintaining her instincts and keeping herself a little cautious. Celaena is also much more than she seems, her own hidden political agenda, but I will come back to her when she's far more relevant. All right, progressing deeper into the book, the competition heats up, the tests grow more difficult, and more champions turn up dead under increasingly suspicious circumstances. But the tests themselves, honestly, are a bit of a letdown. We've got archery, poison identification, obstacle courses. They're not bad, but just uninspired. They do serve a purpose, nudging Celaena's growth with flashbacks to Oberon's training from the first book, building up Cain's menace, and tracking who's left. But they lack punch. For the most part, there's nothing really thrilling or memorable about them. That is, except for one, a 1v1 duel where Celaena, she's sort of at this point where she's very much fed up with hiding her skill. So she goes in bare-fisted against a bladed opponent to prove a point, to just show how good she really is, to let out some much-needed frustration and aggression. It's cathartic and it is very much satisfying until it ends too quickly. I was really hoping for some brutal beatdown, maybe even push Celaena too far and have Chol or Brulo be forced to step in. Instead, it sort of just fizzles and we cut to the next scene. The thing is we know that Sarah J. Maas can write brutality. With the aftermath of Sam in the first book and the killings specifically in this one, it just felt like edging. I was all for Celaena finally letting loose, but it's half-baked and disappointing. The deaths of the champions aren't all that impactful either. They're mostly there to keep the mystery moving. Except for, again, one particular instance, we have Varen's death, which stands out only because Chol lets Celaena examine the body, which was super cool, honestly. It's a great moment for her to flex. She's sharp, she's observant, and completely within her element. She breaks down the clues like she's some seasoned detective, which does totally track given her history with death and killing. It really is just one of those scenes where we're reminded of just how dangerous and competent she really is. Now, Celaena does begin to investigate these murders in semi-secret through some insight from Nehemia, books found in the library, and a little bit of Chol. She discerns these ancient markings called word marks, magical symbols. They were found near the bodies and around certain areas of the palace, along with word gates, which are portals to other realms. And this is where the mystical, magical elements really start to ramp up. And I'm really here for it. Honestly, I love a good magic system. And while this one is still shrouded in mystery, that is honestly what makes it so compelling. It reminded me a bit of what I enjoyed in Sanderson's Mistborn, not in structure, but in how the mystery pulls you in. These ancient word marks are definitely fascinating. We don't know how they work yet, and the lack of clarity actually makes the story more exciting and compelling. It becomes a journey of discovery both for Celaena and for us as Sarah J. Maas sort of starts peeling back the layers of Aurelia's lost past. Meanwhile, Celaena's relationship with Dorian and Chol deepens. Dorian is charming, increasingly drawn to Celaena, and frequently visits her. He brings her books and seeking her company. Their flirtation gradually intensifies. And Chol, whilst more reserved, grows protective of Celaena, struggling with his duty to the king and his feelings. Celaena, in turn, she begins to trust them more, though she still does remain guarded. All this eventuates into one of my favorite scenes in the whole book. Dorian and Celaena share a rare, intimate scene in her chambers. She's playing a somber melody on the piano, lost in thought, when Dorian quietly enters and sits beside her. He's uninvited, he's smug, and intending to tease. At first, the banter is playful, almost like a schoolyard crush. He tries to get under her skin, and she snaps back. But when he asks, "What was that piece? It was so sad. Were you thinking of a secret lover?" It's petty, a jealous comment, clearly projecting, and Celaena calls him out. "Yes," she snaps. Her tone shifts, and what follows is one of the book's most vulnerable exchanges. She cuts through the game, clearly fed up with being treated like a curiosity, a distraction for a bored prince, and for the first time, Dorian sees the weight she carries, not just her reputation, but her grief, her loss, and he backs off embarrassed and makes to leave. But right before he does, he turns, though still stuck in his own insecurities, asks, "This mysterious lover of yours, he doesn't live in the castle, does he?" She yells at him to go, but just before the door closes, she says quietly, "His name was Sam." Dorian freezes and asks, "What happened?" "He died," she replied. "When?" 13 months ago. It's a true emotional gut punch, soft, sad, and deeply human. In that one moment, Celaena's mask slips and we feel the depth of what she's lost. This scene made me quite emotional. It's real, vulnerable, and very moving. In my previous video, when I covered The Assassin's Blade, I talked about the impact of Sam's death on Celaena, or more so what impact there would be or should be. This is a great moment that tells us that Sam is still someone that matters to her, that she misses him, and the love that they had for each other. But unfortunately, it's all we really get. Her growing relationship with Dorian isn't affected by this loss at all. We don't see her struggle with the idea of it, or forming a new connection with someone, or feel guilty that it might be too soon, or even fear that she might somehow lose him in a similar fashion. It is a great moment. It is emotional, it is impactful, and it is one of my favorites in the whole book. But it is unfortunately relegated to sentimentality for Celaena. And for Dorian, it allows him to view Celaena as just a normal girl who feels just as deeply as everyone else. Don't get me wrong, it works well for what it is, but I would have liked to see her past have more impact on her present. But I think that was impossible, because Assassin's Blade was written after this, and in fact even the next book after, so the continuity is severely impacted here. Alrighty, so moving on. Celaena, through supposed happenstance, discovers ancient tunnels beneath the castle from within her room. There is this old tapestry on one of her walls, and a breeze from within the tunnels ruffled these, and she discovers these tunnels. From within these tunnels, she discovers the tomb of Gavin. This is the first king of Adelan and his queen, Elena. Elena's ghost appears to Celaena, giving her prophetic guidance, warning her of a great evil and urging her to defeat it, and giving her magical protection through, again, an ancient golden amulet bearing the eye of Elena, which does begin to glow if danger is near. The ghost of Elena does return on occasion, just to repeat her warnings and offer some assistance and guidance and help, but she is no more knowing than Celaena herself. Now, all of this is interesting, engaging, and mysterious. The story at this point was really ramping, leaning further into ancient magic, destiny, which I know is a trope, but I'm definitely a sucker for. Sometime after this, we have a moment between Chol and Celaena after the rebel executions, which I really appreciated. It was subtle but powerful, and a real turning point for Chol's character. Up until this point, he's been slowly warming up to Celaena, letting his walls down, showing glimpses of something deeper, but this moment is definitely different. For the first time, his loyalty to the king and crown falters a little bit. He's visibly shaken by what he's witnessed. The horror of the executions cuts through his discipline and duty, and we finally sort of see him more than just the king's loyal captain of guard. He is deeply human, and he sees clearly that not everything done in service to the crown is just or right. And that shift, him looking past his orders to acknowledge what's morally right versus wrong, was very heartwarming. It added depth to his arc and his character, and made his growing bond with Celaena feel more meaningful. And then right after that emotional weight is lifted, Celaena throws up in front of him because she is on her first period since Endovier, which she described as the worst she's ever experienced. It caught me completely off guard in the best way. It was honest and awkward, a little gross, but surprisingly funny and charming. But it grounded the moment. It reminded me again that this story isn't just about assassins, kings, and magic, but it's also about real people navigating complex, messy, very human emotions and bodies. Okay, so before we head into the final stretch of the book, the narrative does finally loop back to Celaena, her obsession with Dorian, or more accurately with the crown. Her desire to obtain more power resurfaces in full force. It's here we see her make a desperate move, aligning herself more directly with Duke Perrington, It's not just an alliance, it's manipulation, at least from Calton's point of view. She believes that she is coercing or manipulating the Duke into what she wants. She's trying to spin her need into Parrington's favor, playing on his ambition to essentially take care of her problem, which is Celaena. And their solution is Bloodsbane. It's a poison, subtle and non-lethal, but enough to essentially tip the odds into Cain's favor during the final duel. And look, practically speaking, this works well as a plot device to raise the stakes for the final confrontation. But in reality, we know that it won't work. There's no real tension in the if, only in the how. Celaena is the protagonist and we know she's going to pull through. So when the plan is spelled out for us in advance, what the poison is, what it does, it sort of deflates the moment. There's no surprise. So I honestly think that it would have worked better if the book had kept the details hidden. Let us feel the threat without fully understanding it. Mention the poison by name, sure, but keep its effects vague. Would have added a layer of dread, leaving us to wonder what Parrington and Calton were planning. And that uncertainty would have added or carried more tension all the way through to the climax, making the eventual reveal hit much harder, at least in my opinion. Still, I mean, despite that, I was very intrigued to see how she would fare, or how it would all unfold, how the poison would factor into the duel itself, how Celaena would survive it all, and what it might cost her. Even if we knew she would survive, the way she gets through it still does matter. Now we finally get the crucial reveal. Celaena, still studying the word marks, eventually discovers the meaning and purpose behind them, specifically the ones surrounding the dead champions. For sacrifices to the reread, using the victim's blood, mark the area around it accordingly. Once the creature has been summoned, these marks guide the exchange. For the flesh of the sacrifice, the beast will grant you the victim's strength. Okay, now let's jump straight into the climax. Everything up until this point is sort of a slow drawn lead up, and I would like to just temper the video's length just a little bit. So the final duel. Everyone here is watching: the king, Dorian, Parrington, Caltain, Nehemia, and of course Chol. And Nehemia gives Celaena a staff before the preliminary fight and uses it quickly to dispatch Grave. There's nothing important or relevant to talk over their fight. She's quick, she's competent, and she deals with him efficiently and effectively. Now, Celaena versus Cain. Whilst earlier fights were quite formal and just a test of skill, this one completely devolves into a savage, near-fatal brawl. Cain is enhanced by the dark magic of the word, towering over Celaena with unnatural strength, fueled by the demons from the word gate that he's been hosting. Cain is relentless and terrifying, landing blow after blow, breaking Celaena both physically and psychologically. And of course, with the Bloodsbane poison in full effect, Celaena struggles to think, let alone move. Her body is battered, bleeding and broken. There just doesn't seem to be any way of her avoiding her impending death. However, the Bloodsbane poison's hallucinogenic side effects have an unexpected result. Celaena begins seeing visions between worlds, ghostly echoes, surreal distortions, demons from another plane, and finally, Elena appearing in a moment of complete desperation. She begins shielding Celaena, and urging her to fight, acting as a supernatural protector alongside Nehemia, who, watching from the sidelines, is covertly activating a circle of word marks to ward off all the invading demonic forces. So both providing enough time and protection for the poison to leave Celaena's system, just giving her a fighting chance. However, despite this support and supernatural intervention, her body is left wrecked. Her face is battered and her body is broken, and she can barely lift what's left of her shattered staff. This fight isn't won with raw strength, but with willpower. Through sheer desperation, Celaena manages to make the best of a single moment of hope. Cain is slashed and stabbed in quick succession. So, after enduring a level of violence that should have killed her, victory is hers. It is not quite over just yet, as Celaena collapses from her injuries. Cain, despite his damage and his loss, rises one last time, dagger in hand, intent on stabbing her in the back. At that precise moment, Cain acts. Driven by loyalty and fear for Celaena, he runs Cain through with his blade. Both the king and Perrington were both watching, but thankfully no reprimand was issued. Although the moment is loaded with silent calculation and contemplation, the king has this cold stare that hints at deeper games played, which we will find out very soon. Meanwhile, Celaena is very confused. She's frustrated and angry at the sudden shock death of Cain, and therefore her failure in this scheme of hers. So she lashes out at Perrington to find resolve, but the Duke turns on her coldly, denouncing her behavior and involvement, framing her as unstable. So she is arrested on the spot and feeling betrayed. So in the quiet after the storm, Nehemia's true role in the events are finally revealed. Though she has played the part of a foreign princess with a poor grasp of the language and minimal political power, she reveals to Celaena that she knows far more about the word marks than she's ever let on. Not only could she read them, she could use them. It was in fact Nehemia who has been secretly countering Cain's demonic summonings throughout the book and beneath the tunnels within the castle, protecting Celaena all this time. So she admits that she is not just a passive ally, but her presence in Rifthold was always part of a deliberate mission. She came not just for political negotiations, but to spy on the king specifically and his involvement in any dark magics. And her wordmark expertise and her magical protective circles were instrumental in allowing Elena to appear and shield her during the duel. Although Nehemia doesn't reveal the true scope of her power, it's clear that she is no ordinary princess. She is a resistance figure with deep magical and political knowledge, and her involvement in this book, in Throne of Glass, is a slow burn revelation. She wasn't just Celaena's friend. She was also one of the few people actively working to prevent a resurgence of dark magic in Adelan. And although she doesn't say it outright, the implications there are quite strong. She's preparing for something much bigger, a much bigger war to come. Now we get to experience a secret conversation between the king and Perrington, one that recontextualizes everything that the reader thought they knew about the story so far, about the tournament. Cain's power and the forces of evil at play. This was a really cool reveal, and although I felt there had to be something more going on, what follows was still very much unexpected. So we learn that Cain's use of word marks and his demonic strength were not rogue actions. They were part of a much larger plan, sanctioned and orchestrated by the king himself with assistance of Parrington. So the king is completely aware of the word marks. He knows about the portals to the other realms, and allows Cain to summon the demons and encourages it, at least through Parrington. And Parrington then confirms that Cain's strength came from the reread and other demonic beings summoned from the realm of the dead. The king and Parrington are pretty much mostly interested in what else can be summoned and eventually what kind of army they can build. The most chilling reveal is the king has been suppressing magic across the continent intentionally. He wields some form of power tied to the word marks or a similar dark force, and he's working to expand it. So it isn't a passive decay of magic, it's an intentional eradication. He is stamping out magical bloodlines, knowledge, and any resistance while preparing something darker beneath the surface. Before we close off, we do come back to Celaena one last time. She is making a very difficult choice to end her romantic attachment with Dorian, preferring a less complicated role as the king's assassin without romantic entanglements, as well as thoughts towards her being eventually free for the first time in her life. Rationally speaking, I do understand this choice, but the will they, won't they, I anticipate from the book, the next book, Crown of Midnight, does have me a little worried. Hopefully I'm proven wrong. Now for my rating and final thoughts. For Throne of Glass, I'm going to give this a solid 4 stars. I honestly really enjoyed the book, definitely more so than Assassin's Blade, which gave us the tragedy as a means of foundation, but Throne of Glass built something much bigger. The characters feel more layered and emotionally complex. The magic system is still veiled in mystery, but it's slowly unfolding in ways that feel deliberate and intriguing. The plot is tight, but expansive, with enough threads to keep me engaged without turning it into a political maze. Regarding Celaena, she is a solid protagonist in my opinion. She is flawed, but competent. Everything she goes through feels real, her decisions are heavy, and her potential is limitless. So yes, I definitely will be continuing with the series. I am in it for the long haul, and if you are interested in hearing my thoughts on the next book or any of the other books in the series, please let me know in the comments. I'm not entirely sure if I will do a video structured like this on every book going forward, but your feedback is appreciated here. If you want it enough, I'm more than happy to do so. Let me know. However, if you have made it this far, thank you seriously. And if you have read Throne of Glass, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. What did you think of the ending, of Celaena's choices? I'd love to hear them, love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to like and subscribe or hit the bell if you want to stay notified for any upcoming videos. Until then, happy reading, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.